Zdravo, Tung. Welcome to Dialogue Corner, a podcast hosted and produced by a group of young women from Belgrade and Prishtina, alumni of the OSCE Dialogue Academy. In our podcast, we will try to bring different guests, such as prominent members of Serbian and Albanian societies and members of the international community, in order to share interesting stories and thoughtful insights. Also, we aspire to introduce our network to a larger audience and to create a community based on values of dialogue and gender equality, as well as share them not only with Albanian and Serbian communities, but throughout the entire region.
Hi everyone, welcome to our Dialogue Corner podcast. My name is Katarina Cukovic. I am alumna of the OSCE Dialogue Academy, and today I am your host. I am beyond excited for today's topic, as today we will discuss one of my favorite topics, which is female leadership, entrepreneurship, business, and innovation. And for today's topic, we have one excellent guest, and that is Aleksandra Vladisavljevic. Aleksandra has more than 10 years of experience in working on the gender responsive budgeting in Serbia. Then she worked as a consultant in the field of entrepreneurship development, social and technological innovations, as well as gender analysis of public policies in budget and economic alternatives. That's in short. Welcome, Aleksandra, and thanks for being our guest.
Thank you very much for inviting me and for having this great opportunity to talk to you and actually to share and discuss these topics that you have selected for today's podcast.
You have really impressive career. You worked with public and private sector, with international institutions like UN Women, OSCE, World Bank, and you were involved in a bunch of projects that support women entrepreneurs. Where did this desire and opportunity to be involved in these topics come from? Was your family supportive? So in short, how did you figure out that you are passionate about this topic?
Okay, it's an interesting question. And when I'm thinking about it, it's basically, I started to work very early. I was at the age of 26 when I got my job in terms that I can really take care about myself and live on my own, be totally independent from my family, meaning not necessarily living with my parents anymore. And at that time, I started to work in a project that was basically a women's political and economic leadership program. And it was consisted of several different areas in which we have worked. And I didn't really know a lot about it. I was total beginner. And then basically through that process, I learned a lot. And then it was an American organization that worked in Serbia, but also in the region of the former Yugoslavia. And it was an interesting journey, and we really learned a lot. And then I somehow find out that it's something that is really interesting. The second part is that I kind of fall in love with economics, and then I worked on the project of the competitiveness of the Serbian economy for 4 years, which was another great experience, working with entrepreneurs from different sectors and experts in different fields, and also trying to understand what are the conditions in Serbia in that respect. So then I really kind of become very much interested in the business development and entrepreneurship development as such. When I finished that particular job, I just didn't want to look for another job anymore. So I said, okay, I will go in the market. So I started my own business in the knowledge economy, working as a consultant, what I'm still working today. And it wasn't easy. I didn't even thought through that much, what exactly I'm going to do. I just wanted to do it. So it was a decision that probably was one of the very good decisions in my life, but it's not that I was really thinking about that. It was just okay, this is my next step, because I was interested in many things. And then you cannot, if you're working at a certain workplace, you can only focus on what is your job. And in this way, I could work on different projects. I could combine all these topics that I was interested in, and somehow it worked for me.
It's such a great and inspiring story. And as you said, sometimes when you are at the beginning of career, you just need to be brave and to go into it without actually knowing what to expect. But we will talk a little bit about this entrepreneurship climate in our region in the later stages of our episode. But for now, I would like to start by defining actually the concept of female leadership. So there are a lot of definitions, and these definitions sometimes include different theories, different concepts, and sometimes it's not actually really clear how to define it. What is it? So according to you, in short, how would you define it, and what are the best skills one female leader should have?
I think that the question of leadership is also a question like how we in our region define leadership as such, like regardless, is it a male or female leadership, but what is our approach to leadership, how we see it, and how it's usually approached as or understood as some person that knows everything and leads everyone. It's not really what I have in mind when I think about leadership. In my view, leadership is a process in which you aim to achieve a certain goal. You have like a direction in which you want to go, but then you also have you have to make environment for your team so that they can achieve together with you that particular goal, but at the same time being in a position to fulfill their own personal growth objectives, or to give their best, or to participate with a high motivation. So it's a basically enabler, and on one hand you enable things to happen, and then and also another very important element to it is to be able to make decisions and then to take responsibility for your decisions. So that's like the leadership for me, and then being like responsible, not blaming others, because if you are a leader, then it's your responsibility for whatever happens in your team. But when it comes to the women's leadership, then we have to also take into account, like, are we encouraged through the education system actually to be leaders at all, or to be followers? Are we encouraged to take actions in life? Do we have such educational programs that can help us in the understanding? We basically don't have. So it's a big confusion what really leadership is, and in that respect, what is women's leadership. So women, but same as men, are into the leadership. They are bringing in their own skills and habits and understanding and learning that are also having these gender roles as are defined. So this is all brought into that process. So it's a kind of a complicated thing, and I'm not sure that we have clarity about that. But definitely we have had lots of programs in which we have encouraged both young men and women to take leadership role, and then to grow and to work to become really the true leaders one day.
Yeah, that leads to my second question. As you said, sometimes, especially when it comes to young women, they have really good business idea, let's say, all necessary skills, but then when it comes to realization, it's totally not happening or collapse. And I also researched something according also to global entrepreneurship monitor methodology. They also said that closure of businesses is much higher when we have women as entrepreneur, and it's also that women entrepreneurship is more fragile, harder to maintain, and it also requires constant support. So why is this, and how we can embrace this, how can we develop these business ideas in the region that actually has not that nice entrepreneurship mindset, in sense that it's, as you mentioned, culturally really difficult, but also there are some institutional challenges. And in your work, what were the main challenges you spotted and how you dealt with them?
Of course, environment is very important for the entrepreneurship, and there is no doubt that Serbia is not entrepreneurial. We don't nurture entrepreneurial culture. In 2012, we did a research on the entrepreneurship attitudes in Serbia, a colleague and I, and then we worked on that research with the SEVES Institute. And then what was interesting finding is that the least the career that the young people consider least is actually entrepreneurship as a way of being independent and having like income. Though that was the last at the list, while on many other countries in the world that's like the first on the list. If you're an entrepreneur, it means that you are kind of taking responsibility in your hand. You are offering a service or a product in the market that will meet some needs or that will better solve a particular problem. So it's a kind of it's a big effort, but in our society, not really. And then we, through the education system and through our schools, we are not really encouraged to be an entrepreneur. So of course, that is changing. And then I think that I can talk for my generation, but I think among the youth, it's now different. They are much more entrepreneurial. They also have much more information. They have access to learning even outside of what is offered through the school system. Of course, the messages that you're getting from your family, from your school, from your environment are very important, because we are also as a society kind of focused on, we have this fear of failures. And then in entrepreneurship, that's normally that you're going to make failures. And the point is that you are, okay, you have your business idea, but whether or not that business idea will succeed will depend on you, of course, plus on environment in which you are. And then we need programs that are going to help individuals to evaluate their ideas, whether or not they are really good business opportunities, because they are great ideas, but not all ideas are at the same time also business opportunities. So this is something that can be learned. It's not something that you have or you don't have. It's basically something that can be learned through the programs, either formal or informal education. So this culture thing is one part. The second one is basically availability of support programs in our countries that are not really developed as they should be when we talk about Serbia. They are sporadic, they are not broad, they don't target really well potential entrepreneurs. So there is lots of obstacles, but still there are many people who are deciding to become entrepreneurs, because this is the way how they can create their own life and then make their own jobs, basically create some value. So the things are changing. The reasons exist on many levels. If we talk about the women in entrepreneurship, they have less capital and property, and that usually they start business that are not that capital intensive. So they have problems with the access to finance. If you want to start in a service sector, for example, when I started my own business, not a single program supported services as such. Like, they don't understand that even if you are like only need a computer and maybe I don't know, something very small, that you still need support to start in the market. So it's a complex. There are like some typical obstacles that exist, but also we found a way how to overcome them. And then more and more girls are basically starting their businesses. And I think this is going to be even more in the future with these new measures that we just introduced through the new strategy for gender equality in Serbia. We have a special measure to support women in the entrepreneurship and innovations.
Yeah, and as you mentioned before, that women that decided to be entrepreneurs, it's mostly like focusing on this trade sector, or they choose forms that have these easier legal approaches in terms it's like more shops than opening companies and so on. And compared to your beginnings and now, do you see this trend changing? And would you say that maybe in future more and more girls and women will be like brave enough to say, now I'm going to start a company and be my own boss?
Uh, First of all, I think that there is no good or bad business, because even in the same sector, you can be very successful and then someone can fail, because it's not like that. Of course, some sectors are lucrative at the moment. For example, if you're starting something in the technology business, now this is a growing sector, but it's also not easier to get involved and succeed in that. So the failure still exists. But I believe that through these programs, new programs, and then all these efforts that are done in the last, let's say, 10 years, in compared to when I started, lots of programs has been introduced, that more and more both women and men, young men, are going to be much more successful in the business startup. When we think about the success of the businesses in Serbia, we don't really know, because the data, it's not really available. So there are some research that is from time to time done, but it's not really that we have a constant year by year data that is gender desegregated, so that we can see really how women perform versus how men perform in business. And this is something that, of course, we have to analyze. But given that women have less access to capital, and then also less connections, and then less resources, more likely that they are more vulnerable in the market. But at the same time, there are some women who are really very successful. So we are trying to promote these good examples and encourage more and more women to take active role, especially in these high value-added sectors, in innovations, in technology, in other kinds of innovations, but something that will have like the value added, where they can really, this is another problem of the countries in development. You have lots of entrepreneurs who are actually in the entrepreneurship because of necessity, not necessarily because they see the opportunity. So we want to make sure that women recognize the opportunities in the market, and then they start businesses in those areas to be more successful.
Yeah, and especially now with the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw actually how fragile some businesses can be, and that especially targeted especially hit young women with middle and small income. And in that sense, I would also like to go back to this fear of failure. That sometimes when we have nice business idea and we try to develop it, but then there is this constant pressure. What if I don't succeed? Constant questioning ourselves. Is it this good? Is my idea good enough? What should I do better? So I was wondering, is that actually healthy to have this constant questioning when you are starting your own business, and how this fear of failure is actually, is that good or negative for developing business?
The fear of failure is really, I think, a barrier for many careers and for many steps that people are considering to take in their careers. When it comes to entrepreneurship, entrepreneurs are learning from their mistakes. Of course, the point of the business planning process and being like supported is that someone helps you to recognize potential risks and then find a way how you will address these particular risks, because it should be calculated risk, not like risk as such. But even with all these calculations, and then you can always fail. The point is how you continue, and then what do you do with that particular failure, or how you are what can help. The first is that you really have tools to evaluate whether or not what you want to do is really business opportunity in the market as well, whether or not you will be able to sell. Maybe you like the idea, but whether or not it's going to be something that someone will buy, it's a different story. So the first level is that we help people who are starting, women and men who are starting their businesses, is to evaluate their ideas. And then the second is to help basically to overcome some of these growth milestones that are also making you vulnerable. For example, you have mentioned the pandemic. Although many businesses have been really very much influenced, especially those services on the street where people literally were not actually being able to work at all. You also have lots of businesses that grew thanks to the pandemic because the things moved online. So those who have been flexible enough and then quickly moved their activities online, those that have worked offline, if it was possibility, for example, to sell online or to do anything that was not done before that, were basically they had advantage in that process, including people in the sector in which I am. I remember that when pandemic started, in 2 weeks, we already all had like Zoom accounts. We just switched overnight, changed methodologies, programs, adapted as much as we could, because you just realize you're not going to have business anymore. So it's interesting. It's not easy, but it's interesting journey because you make decisions and then you take the responsibility for those decisions. You have consequences. Sometimes you succeed, sometimes you fail. But in the beginning, it's really scary, but after some time, it's not anymore.
What does it actually mean to be innovative entrepreneur? Are there any different types, and how can we define that?
Indeed, innovations are not only technological innovations as we usually understand them. They can be social, in a social field. It means basically providing services or products that are needed in a better way to the target groups. It means solving problems differently. It can be offering something by using differently the resources that are available. It means finding a way how to address challenges in certain sectors, or how to, it can be focused on the delivery, it can be focused on the management, it can be focused on the area how you promote yourself, it can be also what you really do, what you offer. We have seen that women have been really very innovative during the pandemic by even coming up to some ideas about some innovative services in the community to help citizens to deal with the consequences of pandemic. Like they quickly organized themselves how to sell online, something that was sold before, for example, on the green markets, or some new services to address the challenges of parents having now kids at home and learning with them online. So we see that it's amazing actually how this can be, how innovation can help us. But it's very important that we understand that innovation, it's not that you're just you're genius individuals. Basically, it can be nurtured, it can be supported in a society. You have a certain, you create an environment in which you actually give a space for the new and different solutions. And then we have some examples where when the local organizations in Serbia try to find a better way to support youth unemployment, for example, and come up with some new ideas that didn't exist before. So basically, I honestly believe that we have to support innovation in all sectors. For the women, that's very important because the sectors in which they are like education and then health and then social scientists. So they're not necessarily always in the technologies. So we have to make sure that we support the process in which the innovation can happen, but also helping them to place this particular innovation in the market. So we have some vehicles that exist, but mostly when we at the moment how we see the innovation in Serbia, how it's understood, it's linked with technologies mostly, but we are trying to push forward and say, okay, let's see what's innovation in all possible sectors in a society, including public and the civil society, but also all kinds of sectors in economy. So being innovative, it means looking at the problem in different way. It means trying to find a better solution. It means having different methodology when you work, including those that are going to be addressed with a particular problem. It's a set of things that can also be learned and supported, and I'm not sure that there is enough programs that I really understand that.
And you mentioned before that soon we will get this new national strategy that will target women entrepreneurs. And can you tell us more about what can we expect new in this strategy that can actually really be beneficial for?
When it comes to women's entrepreneurship, there are like basically two measures are planned. So the first measure is going to basically be focused on the creating programs that are going to support all phases in the business development, meaning from idea to the startup and then development. And then the second measure is focused particularly on the innovation to support, to encourage and to increase the number of, especially and of course young women, to actually enter earlier, to get interested, to be supported, to allocate special resources to support innovative activities of women businesses. It's to create like new tools, how to help them through different programs, from the information to education, to grants, access to finance, access to market, access to knowledge, access to new information, to contacts, to the networking, like different things.
Yeah, and let's hope that this strategy will a little bit nurture, as you mentioned, this innovation in our region. So the concept of this podcast is that we have one word of the episode. And as we talked a lot about entrepreneurship, innovation, and business, I would suggest that for this episode, our word of the day should be women entrepreneurs, or in Serbian preduzetnice or preduzetnica, and in Albanian, I will try my best to say it, although it's extremely difficult to pronounce. So I hope my listeners will not mind. It's grosipermorse. So unfortunately, we need to end our episode. Although I could talk with you hours about these topics because you have such a great knowledge and such inspirational stories to share with us. So, final question of this episode is that since we have a lot of listeners that are at the beginning of their careers and still figuring out which career path to take, what to do. So if you could talk to your younger self at the beginning of career, is there any specific advice you would tell to her, and what would that be?
Yes, I would encourage myself to get involved, to learn more about that, for example, especially about the protection of the environment and how basically economy can be developed in that field. I mean, it's not that this is still possible, but maybe when I think, or I don't know, maybe I would consider myself entering even the sector of technologies as well, or I would I don't know. Maybe I would do everything the same. I don't know. But I would tell to myself, don't give up on your dreams, for sure. And then try to find out what you really want to do. Try to kind of make risks. I mean, this is what I would say to myself, I think.
Yeah, and that failure is totally okay.
It's okay. Yes.
Okay. Thanks a lot for being our guest. And for those of you who didn't subscribe to our channel, subscribe and enjoy our episodes.
Thank you for joining us for the episode of Dialogue Corner. If you liked it, make sure to visit our social media platforms at Dialogue Academy, as well as to subscribe to the show on iTunes, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, make sure to tell your friends about it and share it with your colleagues, and help us in our mission to share the values of dialogue and gender equality. You can also join the conversation by leaving a comment, since we are looking forward to hearing your opinion about this topic. Become a part of the dialogue.